hold it that hard and fast
Okay.
when you get an application, especially if there's an extensive amount of phase 2 work that's been already done.
Yeah.
There's, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I go back.
Yeah, it's kind of
Like,
going
I know it's
backwards.
here.
Yeah.
Ah, there we go.
All right.
Now how you control it, I have no idea, but it's up there.
There's a mouse, so maybe.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, there we go. Keyboard works.
Okay, great.
And just to clarify, this computer is not hooked into this at all. This is just my personal laptop where, sometimes we have people who actually watch via webcast. I don't think we have anybody today, but I'm still doing it. That's what that is.
So you're not with Gibbons.
Correct. Yeah, I'm with a small firm called Baron Wardwell. I used to be with Moffett Thomas, and I do a fair amount of environmental stuff and worked on a number of contaminated properties where the VCP was at least in a conversation as to whether that was something we ought to pursue, but for one reason or another, it just wasn't something we ever did. But so this is particularly interesting to me because I do have contaminated properties that I have to deal with every now and then. And I've always thought some of them were good candidates for the VCP, and if I was the owner, I probably would have done it given the benefits. But sometimes people are a little short-sighted or think it's going to take too long. Whatever.
So who's the Baron in Baron Wardwell?
So the Varon is a guy who's about my age named Will Varon. His dad is the better known Varon. He used to be a judge in Camas County. Oh. And so that's where Will grew up in Fairfield.
Because I think that's I used to work with George Varon.
Yeah, he's mentioned that he does
he kind of hangs out. He used to, I think, do ski patrol at Soldier.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the Varon family overall, I mean, I think they go back to sort of Gooding area, Magic Valley. But now that you mention it, I'm almost positive that I've heard Will mention that he has.
Maybe that's his uncle or something.
An uncle or a great uncle that worked at DEQ.
Yeah, because George retired quite a while ago, probably. I'm guessing maybe 10 years ago. Yeah,
well, they're related. Yeah, I can't remember how that came up before, but somebody else, I think at DEQ, asked me about that.
Yeah.
I'll have to check. Well, thanks for doing this. You guys have any questions for me about how it goes or anything? I mean, like I said, it's usually just sort of 15 minutes of kind of general, section business, and then I'll turn it over to you guys.
So then, after our deal, does this just last like over the lunch hour? Is that
pretty much? Okay. Yeah.
So it's not like there's not more of an agenda that you guys have. It's just
no. It'll likely end with when you guys end, and I mean with factoring in time for questions, you think 45 minutes you'd be able to fill? Does that sound
easy?
Yeah.
Probably gonna have to.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna have to keep us on task because.
Well, that's good to know beforehand. I'll make sure to keep the business stuff as short as I can, and some of these do go over past one. It's not like they'll kick us out. Some people may start to trickle out because they have a meeting or whatever, but that's not uncommon.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think I have a reputation of needing the hook once I get started.
Are you splitting it up in any particular way?
Yeah. So we're doing the first few slides, 2 through 6, and then Bruce is going to be taking over, talking about the VCP. So Brownfield's VCP.
My numbering, it just has the VCP stuff starts on page 6
Oh, okay,
and
and
goes,
that's, yeah,
and then you want go through just the overview, and then you'll go into the.
the process in depth
Depth.
a little bit more, yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Or if you'd rather do the process, I mean, that's fine too, it's up to you.
We can, you can do it. We can chime in.
Okay,
It's-
yeah, that would be
it's
great. Okay.
Good. This will be good. This will be useful.
Kind of the process in depth stuff is, you may have to skip over.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
No, I agree with that. Oh, I do too. Okay. I counted this morning. Okay, it's 30.
Do you guys want me to kind of time you and give you a little wink if you're?
Nah,
it's
okay.
Hey, Ken, how's it going?
Well, buddy,
Good to see you.
come on, sir. Say some
These are our speakers here.
Wonderful.
Peter?
Yes.
I talked to you on the phone when we were doing
Oh,
the
right up.
chapter. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here, so you're even smarter.
Oh, yeah.
Eric Trace.
Every pleasure. I look forward to
Yeah.
it.
I was on the course.
Hi, I'm Leslie Eldridge with
Yeah.
Water, Civil and
With
Environmental.
Peter here too. It gives me a sense of cheer.
An engineer.
Thank you.
Oh,
for
my
that.
goodness,
I
okay.
really
I'm a
appreciate
civil environmental engineer.
Nice.
For 5 years, earned my PE, walked the walk.
And then you walked away and got into.
I have the HP 48 calculator, that's our PM. I'm in the club.
Oh, wow,
I
wow.
got the
Oh
shoes.
my God, the pencil protector and all?
I got
Jeez.
the also survey rod with 100 split.
I know nothing of surveying. I missed out on that. My undergrad was in chemical engineering, so I
Oh,
totally missed, concrete and a lot of that stuff, and then the surveying, which now at this point I kind of feel like, okay, I really should probably kind
The world
of.
has changed. I did the course in, part of the course in college. My first day as an engineer is paperwork in the office. And they told me the other day, by the way, tomorrow you're in the field, they can survey my house. And you're like, that's great.
Sounds good.
I
Hope the
did.
weather was good.
Thank God I paid attention in that class.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I
Instead of
think we
taking
do
it.
that. Beat 'em up a little bit on the CAD, but yeah, no, yeah, we, my undergrad was chemicals, so I got, I thought, oh, and all environmental problems are chemical based, and then I was like, oh dear.
So this should be my,
Hey.
hey, Andrew.
So
Oh,
I
man.
actually
This
did my
should be
undergrad at the
my,
University of Maine.
Okay.
I'm from Maine.
Second one, right?
So,
Well, that should be-
my parents live just north of Freeport right now.
You make it that long.
And then I did the master's in Iowa.
I'm not sure.
No, you're going Jarvis.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah,
No,
where'd you go to
no,
school?
it's-
So my undergrad was
I'm there.
I just-
Also very good school.
No.
I've heard.
No, that's okay.
but I do live in
But still, no kidding. Where?
The National was flat. There's a
Do you guys wanna grab some
food about all the time. I like those.
Yeah, I've heard.
You can wait till.
So is that
Until
what
April starts.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is your chance to eat before you're on stage. I mean, you guys are accounting for the food calculus, so
Okay.
don't worry
Oh,
about
wow.
the food.
All right, then. My brother went to school, he did his first year in school near Andover. Last time I was there, so it was exciting. Darn it. Anyways, he ended up going back, he ended up going to Maine, but, yeah, that's cool. So, God, Idaho to, geez.
Right,
It's good to know that we have great winters around.
I've had the above average days.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
Up to Maine, driving for double walks.
That's a good date. That is a very good date. I don't need to live there anymore.
Right.
Humidity and the mosquitoes,
Right.
I'm kind of all set with. But my
How's it
brother was
going?
living in Boston for a while, and that was fantastic. Because that was such a great city. It's such a
Doing some
they just went up north and called
Valley
North.
area, and I was looking at some of the rates for the
I've been trying to living
places
in
we
London.
can go.
Yeah.
Boston, I've
really liking the Idaho City.
Boston.
Or on the day we go for free.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough to
Cold
beat.
is happening,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
The only
It is.
good place I know to eat it is the place by the hillside up on 21. It's free.
yeah.
Right,
Or the hilltop cafe.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
never-
But
still
that's
always think of it.
probably less reliable. So it's probably
Right.
bad right now, would be what I
Oh,
guess.
sure, yeah,
There's more falls to
yeah.
come.
Well, maybe come
I have the volume of trees
Saturday,
red.
maybe have something.
Oh, we're supposed to get
Or
some.
like black.
Right, it's like, comes along
Yeah,
with
I-
that.
so,
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, the
Yeah, no.
Dark Mountain place, it was cool, like, all you did was
Yeah.
$20
Well,
a
you
person.
get the nice yellow package, right?
Right.
Almost houses.
So that's
We can
bizarre.
Hard.
Yeah, I think I will. They can bring your own too. Use their.
Oh, yeah.
Bring your own sleds.
That's probably the case with the Garden Valley place also.
That's,
Right?
that's really.
Bring your own sled.
How's it going? You got it? You stuck out.
Flashing lights. They're,
Like William, almost everyone would have me.
this is,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, wait,
I grew up in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
it's 5
Oh, yeah.
Well, she has it covered.
And you go down to.
Yeah, like, and we got, she like, we're doing an hour long. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
first one,
guess.
like, down to break on our face. No, I actually agree for actually.
I'm not sure. You know,
Are you?
it's like
Oh, pretty good.
It's hard to.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, the kids are good.
it's high scale.
So before, I was able to get those issues, but now I can't.
You know, you're talking
Do me
about-
a quick technology check.
She didn't elaborate, she just said climate change.
Okay. It's a good
Yeah, I don't I was asking, diving a little deeper.
Yeah.
She mentioned that, well, I don't have a problem with forest fires.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Say that's. Yeah, I
I
would.
was doing it before, and then it stopped, but I think once we got rid of whatever that downloaded and installed.
I'll make those
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's those action.
So to get through the slides, I think this is the error keys or something, you don't know.
Oh,
Okay.
I didn't know, like, after.
The mouse works too, if you need the mouse, that's right, I got it.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Oh, no, I was gonna get back to that.
It's almost fair.
I don't know how that one, this one.
Are you?
Errors on the keyboard.
Yeah.
Get it? Oh. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. There you go. I was hitting buttons. It's just
I grew up with that. Kind of fun. Small hill.
Yeah.
Actually, had another one go blind, but there was really, that was it. But yeah, nice game, so you can. Angles there. Good living. So yeah, you come to participate.
Hey Ryan, how you doing? Good, how about you? When did you sneak in here?
Oh, just a second ago.
Okay.
They let me, or they
They
didn't really let me. I left 5 minutes early, we weren't getting.
I feel pretty good about it.
My shop refresher for this year.
Gotcha. All right.
So,
Well, it's a little known fact, but so our section here, even though we're all pretty much attorneys with the shadows, we do have a provision in the bylaws that allows non-attorney members. So if you find that this is just such a wonderful and engaging thing to attend, then
We come back.
Oh,
you
cool.
can. You know?
Hey,
For a meter, I want to say $25 for the meter. I can't remember this exactly. But I think it's good to get diverse people. I don't like being around. Typically, we're talking about subject matter you guys would find interesting or useful.
Yeah, okay.
Just keep it in the back of your mind.
Well, screening. And there's like sections that are looking.
Give me some examples of some of your other topics that you.
The last CLE that you had was about PCA's power plant. The set of regulations is about state having to come up with some regulation. So that was the last one. Coming up We have one about a grant that the state has gotten to study urban wildlife interface with respect to fires. We'll have Tom Schultz from Lands talking about oil and gas. We did have a historian lined up to talk about, she that works on a lot of environmental cases when she's going back and researching irrigation projects and the history of them or something like that. Contamination cases, like Superfund cases where you have to go way back to figure out entities and their contributions, and she had to cancel on us. So I mean, that, you know,
So you get together every month?
well, every month except December and over the summer, so.
Right.
8 meetings. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get started even though people are still trickling in and gathering food or getting food. Hello, everybody. I'm Dylan Lawrence. I'm the chairperson of the Environmental and Natural Resources section. And since we're still a relatively small group, why don't we just go around real quick and tell everybody your name, where you're from, and if you are an officer or a member of the governing council of the section, maybe mention that too. So again, I'm Dylan Lawrence. I'm the chairperson, and I work at Barron Wardwell here downtown. And I'll turn it over to Marie.
I'm Marie Kellner, and I am the water associate at the Idaho Conservation League, and I'm on the at-large committee, or
I believe that's
something.
correct.
I believe
Yeah.
that's the name of what
I think it's the governing
the
council.
governing council.
Which I learned just a couple weeks ago.
I'm on the governing council.
Yeah.
I don't know my powers.
I'm Andrea Courtney, and I'm a Deputy Attorney General representing DEQ, former Dylan.
Former chair.
Just a member now.
I'm Natalie Helblina, and I have a solo practice. This is Q. I'm on my own firm at Q Bromley, primarily practicing water law, and I'm in Midland.
Bob Maynard, Perkins Coie.
JD Sager, law for Justice Eisman.
Peter Barton, you're giving us first time. Greg Adams, law firm Richardson Adams. Brian Hurlbut at Advocates for the West. I'm an at-large board member.
Brian Stevens, I'm with Advocates for the West. I'm at 3L doing my semester in practice.
Welcome.
I'm Taliesin Brooks, and I'm an associate attorney at Advocates for the West, and I'm a section member.
I'm Ryan Eldridge. I'm a civil engineer with Water, Civil, and Environmental.
My name is Leslie Eldridge. I am also with Water, Civil, and Environmental.
I'm Eric Trainer. I'm the Brownfields Program Manager for DEQ.
Bruce Wachurski, I'm with DEQ also.
And do we have anybody on the phone?
Eichmann?
Was that Carissa Eichmann? Hello?
Hi, Dylan. This is Tyson Rellickley.
Okay, hey Tyson, how you doing?
Good.
Peggy Higgins from my home phone.
Hello, how are you? Anybody else on the phone?
Yeah, Scott Spears from Boise.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, well, I wrote your guys' name down on the CLE sheet so that you will get credit as well. We do have a Polycom up here that's close to me, and it will be close to the speakers. I'll try to repeat as much as possible people that are far away from it because I don't see tentacles like we sometimes have. But I'd like to say thank you again to Peter and Gibbons Pursley and the staff here for letting us use the conference room and all their help in getting things set up and food ordered. It's a huge help, but it does save money for the section. And you know, we are one of the smaller sections with a relatively small budget, so that does help out. Before the meeting, with the materials that Dana circulated, one of the items attached were the minutes from our November meeting, and we are supposed to approve those. So for anybody that had a chance to look over them, can I get a motion to approve the November minutes? All right, I have a motion from Peter Tyson. Any seconds?
I'll second.
Okay. Man, making me sweat up here. All right, we have a second from Andrea Tyson. I know somebody else on the phone seconded, but I think Andrea beat you. All in favor of approving the November minutes?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, they're approved. Tyson, I do apologize. I typically try to circulate with the materials the latest set of financial statements, and I just forgot. So I apologize for that. But Tyson, do you have a treasurer's report for us?
Sure, I do. The bar has provided the final income statement and balance sheet for 2015. Our section ended with a fund balance of $5,451. So that will be carried over into next year. We put together a budget based on the income that we thought we would generate this year. We didn't include that carryover fund balance. So I think we'll have about $6,000 of unbudgeted funds that we can work with.
That's great.
It's a good year.
Okay, good. And Tyson, you mentioned the budget. He put together the proposed budget for the year and did a great job. Sometimes you look at those things and some of the line items are very cryptic, what they refer to, but he actually confirmed what each one was, put a little comment in the spreadsheet, so whoever's in his shoes next year is going to benefit a lot from that. So thanks for doing that. Next, I wanted to recap the half-day CLE that we had a couple of weeks ago that the section sponsored. I was going to have Emmy report on that since she's the one that organized it, but she sent me an email this morning saying that she had something come up. So I'll just read you from the email that she sent to me. Okay, this is Emmy's words. Basically, I think I'd say the event went well. We had more attendees than last year and were able to charge a bit more. Reviews seem positive overall, and then we'll have final numbers from the bar in the next couple of months. So, not a whole lot of detail. It sounds like we'll get, more hard and fast numbers in terms of attendees and revenue in a few weeks. I attended it. I thought it was excellent, just like last year. I enjoyed it. And thought it went well, and it's interesting. It was in a different location, what seemed to be a bigger room, which made it feel like there were fewer people than last year, but apparently there were actually more. So that's good news. I did happen to scan the results of the feedback form that Mahmoud circulated, and they were all pretty high. I think everything averaged over a 4 out of 5, other than that some people would have liked better victuals apparently, but in terms of the
longer lasting, they took the coffee away, and I'm not a coffee drinker, but it would have been nice in the afternoon to have that available.
Oh, okay.
That's what that was about.
So that was you, huh?
Yeah.
Well, at least you fess up to it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But no, I mean seriously, in terms of the substance and the speakers and all that, all of the reviews averaged out to over a 4, as I recall. So I really liked it. I thought it was good. Emmy does an excellent job coordinating this stuff, and if she's not careful, she's gonna find herself with like a permanent position doing this for the section.
I would like to comment that I liked the format because it was very dialogue. I thought you did a great job as
Yes, Peter.
Facilitator, kind of all of those roles. I thought but I liked it was more dialogue as opposed to lecture.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just found that to be kind of a nice format.
Good. Glad you liked it. And thanks for reminding me. Peter did an excellent job. He was up on stage for a fair amount of time, having to corral a panel and ask questions, and I thought you did a great job. Marie, as well, you were up there.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks. But Peter, I was going to say, Peter really facilitating that whole panel for 2 hours, and it was super interesting the whole time.
Yeah.
It was excellent. And kudos to Brian too for his presentation. I thought if I could just chime in, the ethics panel that Brian spoke on, for folks that weren't there, I thought was really, really helpful. And I really appreciated that kind of evolved into a dialogue as well with folks in the audience that had very relevant experience to share. And I think it was really neat that it was at the end of the day where maybe there was a certain level of comfort just from having been there for a few hours. And so maybe that helped facilitate that as well, but I found it really useful.
Well, good. What next? Okay, so over the past few months, both Tyson and I have attended a couple of those practice section meetings that the bar has periodically. And so, Tyson, I looked back at your notes. I'll just summarize real quick, and then if I missed anything from the one you attended, you can chime in. But the big takeaways for me attending the one yesterday were that we've got the bar is having its annual meeting in July at the Riverside Hotel here in Boise, and they're now starting to solicit proposals for CLE presentations by the various sections. I mean, typically in the past, I don't know that this section has done one. Andrea, do you know differently? Have we? Okay.
We did one, but it was up in Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
In conjunction with Bunker Hill.
Okay, so, and I know that the speakers are we need to give them a fair amount of time, so maybe if anybody has any thoughts about that, maybe email them to me after the meeting in terms of potential topics that we might propose. A lot of times we open it up to a group discussion, but I want to make sure we leave enough time for the speakers. Something else that Mahmoud opened the meeting yesterday by asking each section representative of, what's the biggest challenge that your section is facing. Candace was there too for the water law section, and it struck me that so many of the responses were, well, we just, like to get more participation. It's the same few people who are doing stuff every time. And for a section that's pretty small compared to some of the others, I think we have really good participation. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I started coming to these in 2005 when it was basically 4 people who would show up every time. We never had CLEs. It was up in the Stoll Reeves office over in the U.S. Bank building, and over the years it's just gotten bigger and better. We have more CLEs, and I think it's attributable largely to my predecessors like Andrea and Erica and Peter have done a great job sort of establishing that, but then also, younger folks. We have people who have graduated relatively recently, Greg and Brian and Emmy and Megan Carter, who comes to a lot of these, who I think infuse a lot of energy into the section as well. So it made me very appreciative for what we have for a relatively small section that I think is pretty vibrant. And then we also should have new membership information in about a month or so with the licensing process that the bar just went through. Tyson, did I miss anything that you wanted to cover from the one you attended?
I would just add, he ended 2015 with 125 members. So we'll see how that increases for next year. Dylan, did you want to mention the judicial education request?
How about you cover that, Tyson?
Okay, so Justice Horton is coordinating the Idaho Judicial Branch's judicial conference, and he wanted to know if any of the sections thought that there was an issue that judges needed additional training on. And if there was something, he would like to know about it. So if you have an issue of concern that you think judges would benefit from, why don't you just send an email to Dylan and we'll send it on to the appropriate people.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Sounds good. And just to clarify, I assume we're not supposed to be identifying judges individually.
No, it's a general topic.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Dylan, there was one thing to add. When I went to the council meeting, they were looking for sections that express interest that they wanted to sponsor some events in addition to CLEs at the annual bar meeting. Then Mahmoud mentioned that. I guess these events for like evening reception or some sort of.
Oh yeah, he touched on it. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I just throw that out there. From a financial perspective, it looks like we have plenty of funds if we were interested in doing something like that.
Right, okay. Okay. Well, thank you for those additions. Just real quick on these last two items, because I've already gone past what I intended to take up. You know, we have plenty of proposals for our advocate issue. Submissions are due April 13th, and I did send an email to people who had proposed articles, letting them know that I had gotten, you know, they typically allot about 6 full-size articles per issue from the sponsoring section, and I think I've gotten 9 or 10 proposals, and I didn't want anybody to not know that. You know, typically what they do is use it as an article in a subsequent issue, because not every issue has this problem, or you know, I hate to even refer to it as a problem, but so I just wanted people to be aware that it's possible their article would get delayed to a non-ENR section edition of the Advocate. And so if anybody, you know, nobody has said, well, I'm out now, which would be totally fine if you want to. But anyway, that's the update on the Advocate. Is we're in good shape for articles. But if any of the authors are on the line and are having second thoughts or whatever, just please feel to let me know that as well. And then Tyson, I think we should probably talk about the donations and scholarship stuff at another time, because that'll take a fair amount of time, and I don't want to cut into the speaker's time anymore. So with that, I will we'll turn it over to the CLE portion of the meeting. And I know I had you guys send me bios, but maybe it would be better if you guys just introduced yourselves. So I'm gonna get out of the way and let you guys come up here. I'll just do quick introductions, and then you guys can fill in the background. So starting here to my immediate right, we have Bruce Wysherski with DEQ, Eric Trainer with DEQ, Leslie Eldridge with WCE, which stands for Water, Civil, and Environmental, Inc., and Ryan Eldridge to her right. And so I'll let you guys come up and fill in the detail of the background, and I will get out of the way.
Start real quick. Well, we have a lot of stuff to go through here, so I'm just going to keep it really brief. So again, my name's Leslie Eldridge, and Ryan and I started Water, Civil, and Environmental about 2.5 years ago. We do comprehensive water resources, civil, and environmental engineering services. So we're here in Boise. My background is, my undergrad was in chemical engineering, got my master's in environmental engineering, kind of went through the whole doing remediation type stuff. Lately, I've been getting more into regulations, so I'm thinking maybe I should show up here more often.
You're welcome.
But anyway, so we're really excited. Thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate Dylan invited us, and thank you for Gibbons Pursley for having us, and to Bruce and Eric. We wanted to kind of go over the voluntary cleanup program. We're happy to give you some information as we've gone through a couple projects with it, but it's even better to have the experts here. So if I don't know the answer, thank goodness we've got Bruce and Eric. So that's kind of my background. Do you want to start and then say a couple words, and then you can just launch in if you like?
I've been with DEQ for about 27 years or so. I'm currently the voluntary cleanup program manager. On the side, I'm a hydrogeologist and provide technical assistance to different programs within the waste division and other divisions. And over the course of those 27 years, I've worked kind of in a whole variety of programs: leaking underground storage tank program, wastewater land application, groundwater, general groundwater studies, a whole variety of things. So that's.
Yeah, I'm Eric Trainer. I'm currently the Brownfields Program Manager. I've been with the department for 19 years, a little over 19 years. I worked in a variety of programs as well: drinking water, leaking underground storage tanks, brownfields. I've been the Brownfields Program Manager for about 3 years now, and then I worked in the Brownfields program for 5 years previous to that. Just do a lot of site assessments and remediation projects.
I'm Ryan Eldridge. I work at Water Civil Environmental. Leslie owns the company, and I work for her, and which is great. But beyond that, my background's civil engineering. I've done a lot of remediation, and that's where the whole voluntary cleanup program, where I were given a presentation, is we've had the opportunity to work with Bruce and Eric on a couple cleanups here in town, and and it's a very we collaborative environment instead of it being an adversarial environment of private clients owning a site trying to clean it up and DEQ forcing certain things. We're able to collaborate on it versus it being adversarial, and so we kind of wanted to give a little presentation on that, and by having the participation of DEQ, it shows how collaborative the environment can actually be on accomplishing some of these projects and turning some properties that were kind of eyesores in our own communities into stuff that will be used and really help our communities. So starting off, I think Eric's kind of going to go first.
Yeah, do you guys mind getting up close to the polygon when you present your portion? And for the people on the phone, one of the attachments to Dana's email was the presentation that they're about to go through, was the handouts for it.
So yeah, brownfields. What is a brownfield? This is the legal definition. It's a vacant or underutilized property where redevelopment or reuse is complicated by actual or perceived environmental contamination. So that can run the gamut of all kinds of different sites. And brownfields revitalization, you're going to hear that a lot in conjunction with the term brownfields. And that is a process in which contamination of brownfield sites is addressed so that sites can be redeveloped, whether it be residential, commercial, or mixed use. And then DEQ's Brownfield Assessment Program funds and conducts environmental assessments of brownfield sites to assist communities in revitalizing their neighborhoods. And if contamination is found, DEQ will assist in locating funds to clean up the property and return it to productive use. And what we've been able to do with our program in the last 3 years is we've been able to fund up to 2 cleanups a year, depending on the size and scope of the cleanup. If it's a little bit bigger cleanup or it's going to take a little more time, then we can only fund 1 year. So our goal is to fund at least 1 cleanup a year, and if we can, fit another one in there.
Are those state funds, federal funds?
Yeah, we are funded through EPA. It's a federal program that's administered by the state at the state level.
Eric, just go back 1 second. I also had a question about the definition of what's a brownfield. And of course, the actual environmental contamination is the easy part. It's where it says perceived environmental contamination.
And the perception's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And so the question though is, I always wonder, if you say, hey, it's a brownfield because it's perceived environmental contamination, and then something happens, we all go, oh, no, we're fine now. It's not contaminated. But that information kind of only is a common experts in some conference room. It's not widely shared. Is it ever stopping a brownfield from your perspective? Does I don't go cross it off the list because not people know?
It'll never be crossed off the list because if we've spent money on a site, and then we spend money on a site, it was a brownfield at the time.
Okay.
There have been instances where people have brought that up to me and say, hey, this is fully redeveloped. And I'll provide a statement, a letter that basically says, hey, funds were expended on this property to conduct an assessment and or cleanup.
Yeah, once it's developed, I get that part. That's more focused on the perception.
Yeah,
Perception's a big problem.
Perception is a big problem. I won't be able to ever take a site off the list if we spend money. That's just it's the same thing like if, for example, leaking underground storage tank. If it was a leaking underground storage tank and it got cleaned up and it got closed and no further action letter issued, it's still always going to be considered, that at one time it was a leaking underground storage tank. And so for the record and perpetuity, that's just kind of how it goes. But like I said, I have been flexible and I have written letters to say, hey, this site's fully redeveloped and doesn't meet the definition of a brownfield anymore. And it wouldn't be eligible for additional brownfield funding unless some regulation came up. So we've been around, this is our 12th year. Our first round was in 2004. To date, we've provided either phase 1 and or phase 2 site assessments on 132 different properties throughout the whole state. And we've done assessments, like I said, throughout in each of the 6 DEQ regions that we have. Assessments have been conducted on behalf of urban renewal districts, cities, counties, nonprofits, and then we also can do private parties if we have a sponsor of like one of the above entities, like if a property is within the urban renewal district, but it's held by a private property, that the urban renewal district will sponsor the application, then we can do it on private properties. The need needs to be demonstrated that a proposed brownfield site is either blighted or underutilized. It's difficult to develop due to past uses and the real or perceived environmental issues are hampering developer interest. And there's a development plan or concept, and it's in an area that development is desired, like an urban renewal district, a local improvement district, or any other type of targeted renewal zone by a city or a county. And then the site has to be eligible. And eligible sites can include, I mean, it runs the gamut of any type of real property, former gas stations, mine sites, former timber mill sites, bulk fuel storage and distribution sites, landfills, dry cleaners. If it had a commercial use, you know, it's something we would consider. Generally, any commercial or industrial site that may be contaminated with hazardous substances or petroleum. Ineligible sites, there are sites that we just can't touch, and that, you know, the first one on that list is anything that's on the national priority list. It's ineligible by rule. Sites that are subject of an ongoing state or federal enforcement action, and sites with contamination known to present a high risk to public health. To date, that is one category we've never had to deal with in terms of the high risk. And how EPA defines high risk versus what they consider low risk. Sites are subject to ongoing CERCLA removal action. So a CERCLA site, yeah, we wouldn't be able to step in and provide any assistance on. So what the Brownfields program will do is we have contractors that are under contract with DEQ, and that, you know, it's a 4-year rolling contract. It gets renewed goes out to bid every 4 years. And then so what we do is our contractors will perform phase 1 and phase 2 assessments, and then we'll also provide funding for planning, sampling, and cleanup planning. And then we'll get reports with the recommendations that go out to the owners and the interested parties, and then also we'll perform a risk assessment if needed. And then we also will do, in terms of cleanup planning, we'll also do an alternative for brownfields cleanup, analysis of brownfields cleanup alternatives, otherwise called an ABCA. So that will go through and it'll rank, consider all the different cleanup options that are available, including the, you know, no action option, different costs, the different complexities with that, the odds of meeting the cleanup goals, and then rank them and identify the preferred cleanup option for any of the entities looking to redevelop, do the cleanup. And then we basically, it's a first come first serve basis. So we get a site in and we go through a ranking and a scoring process, and we just do it as you come in. So we don't do any type of contest or anything like that. If it's eligible and it's a good project and has a redevelopment potential and there's redevelopment interest, then we get that thing going and move on it.
Okay,
So
can I ask a quick question
You bet.
before we leave brownfields? So with brownfields, are you looking just at the characteristics of the site itself, or are you also looking at any aspect of who's applying, and whether they need to like qualify for the innocent, you know, they need to be innocent landowners?
Well, yeah, they can't, the ineligible entity cannot be responsible for the contamination.
Okay.
There's a caveat to that where I have considered people that can demonstrate an inability to pay. If they could, you know, they demonstrate an inability to pay to fund an assessment, and it's a highly sought after site. There's a lot of developer interest in the site. and we'll look at their tax records, like the past 3 or 4 years, and we have some mechanisms to determine whether they have the ability to pay or not. And if it's determined they have an inability to pay, then we would consider doing that assessment.
Thank you.
So once a site has been, maybe gone through the brownfields program, oftentimes it'll end up in the voluntary cleanup program. The voluntary cleanup program's goals, and I'll show you those in a little bit, they're aligned with those of the brownfields program, the objectives. And as it turns out, the voluntary cleanup program was created by the legislature in Idaho in 1996, which really predated the federal brownfields program, but it sort of anticipated the brownfields program. The legislature authorized the program in 1996 and created the Land Remediation Act. Rules that supported the act were created the next year, so that guides and describes the implementation of the program. The act itself was amended in 2006 to include what's called the Community Reinvestment Pilot Initiative, which I'll go into a little bit more detail in a little bit. To date, since 1996, we've had 35 sites enter the program, and 17 have been completed and closed. Those sites run the gamut again in terms of what types of sites and contamination. We've got wood treatment sites, pole treating sites. We have dry cleaners, mine sites, gas stations. We actually had one site that was a meth lab, which some of you might have heard about locally in Boise here. So the goals, as stated in the act, are these. We're trying to balance protecting public health and the environment with this trying to encourage redevelopment of contaminated properties where they exist, and with the idea of giving a little boost to local economies. The other thoughts behind the act are that we're trying to do this in a non-adversarial way, trying to make this into more of a partnership between DEQ and willing entities who are out there who want to clean up properties and get them back, into productive economic status. There was the idea of trying to provide some financial assistance as an incentive for participants to participate in the voluntary cleanup program and clean up properties. And I'll describe what was put into the act and maybe some changes and where that has all kind of fell out. But you can see that some of the goals here, they tie directly into the same goals that the brownfields program has as far as what they're trying to accomplish.
Can I ask
Yeah,
a question?
sure.
Maybe you're gonna cover this, but does it protect, is there an incentive for the landowner in the sense that it reduces their risk or their need to disclose when anything going forward in the future when they sell the property? Or what happens when you get on the property and you realize that this is more than what you would have originally determined as contaminated? I mean, that it's bigger, or there's some contaminant that you didn't expect.
Well,
I mean, is there
maybe
an
we
incentive
can.
that way?
Maybe I can go when I'll go through the process,
Okay.
and we can maybe I'll get to that after that. But some of the benefits that we believe accrue to participating in the VCP include an expedited remediation process, and it's expedited, I think, from the standpoint that people who are working on a cleanup like this, for one, they are typically maybe the property is in some kind of development or projected development, and so we give people a little bit more, I would say, personalized attention in terms of how much time we spend with them in reviewing documents, and I think we get to things quicker, and we're more sensitive to the fact that they are, developers' timelines are oftentimes not the same as other people's timelines. And so I think even though there is a public comment period that's required as part of this whole process, I think we still have the ability to kind of expedite cleanups by our direct kind of like more one-on-one kind of participation with the people who are interested in doing the cleanups. At the end of the process, you can get what's called a covenant not to sue, as well as the completion. You get what's called a certificate of completion. Both of those documents get recorded on the deed to the property, and so they run with the land. While the applicant's in the process of cleaning it up, they're protected from any kind of enforcement action. We can apply risk-based cleanups to the cleanups that we approve. We can use activity and use limitations through environmental covenants on the properties that are participants in the process. There's lender liability protections, and built into the act is a property tax exemption once the remediation is complete. This is one of the financial incentives that I described earlier, and it ties back into the amendment that I mentioned at the very beginning, the Community Reinvestment Pilot Initiative. So the original act implemented this property tax exemption, and at the risk of taking up the rest of the time in trying to explain what that is, suffice it to say that in the whole time that the program's been in place, nobody has ever used the property tax exemption, or some people have asked about it, and I think once they ask about it and find out what it is, nobody's used it. And part of the problem with that, as in my view, is that it requires a site of a certain size and value that relative to what the costs of remediation are these days, that makes it really not much of a value to take advantage of, especially if you're talking about properties in rural areas that are kind of underwater to start with. They're not high value, and oftentimes they're flip-flopped in terms of how much it costs to clean it up versus what the properties are worth, just on a land basis, let's say. So nobody's really ever used that property tax exemption. In 2006, the Community Reinvestment Pilot Initiative that was approved by the legislature, what that did was institute a pilot program where the legislature actually came up with $1.5 million for the program, and they allocated that to 10 sites that could participate in the pilot program. And they would come into the VCP, and if they completed their cleanup, they could get a rebate of up to $150,000 per site towards their against their cleanup costs. So that was in 2006. We had a ranking process that went on. We filled those 10 slots like that, and we haven't been able to we still have money of the original $1.5 million. There's still approximately 4 sites that have to be cleaned up. We've issued 6 rebates. 4 sites still have to finish up their cleanups, and they will probably use the maximum rebate available. But because of interest accrued, there's going to be money left in the fund. Last year, we went to the legislature and asked the legislature to grant us the ability to have a couple of additional slots so that we could use some of the anticipated leftover funds, and they rejected our proposal. And so what we're faced with right now is that the pilot program is still operating. We're working to clean up the remaining sites, but once those sites are done, we are basically going to turn over whatever money is left over back to the legislature into the general fund, unless we maybe come up with another proposal to them that they find more desirable. So that being said, there are, when it comes to incentives, we have these other incentives, and there are some other funding mechanisms, things that we can point to certain sites that are still, can help maybe draw people into the program. And so, for example, Eric mentioned that the first grant that the Brownfields program got was in 2004. That was 8 years after the beginning of the VCP. Between the time that the Brownfields program started getting grants and that in 1996, when the VCP program started, we had 1 participant in the VCP. Once the Brownfields program got started, being able to provide assessments to property owners, that's money that they don't have to spend on assessments, that they could devote to cleanup. And the numbers of VCP sites started to rise. It was not just coincidental once the Brownfields program came into being. So we've seen kind of, ebbs and flows in the number of sites as the program's gone along, and it's tied to a lot of things. One is Brownfields funding. Another is the pilot. We had that pilot where we could provide incentives for cleanup. We got a bunch of new participants into the program in a very short order. Currently, we're developing a partnership with the Department of Lands. They have funding through their Abandoned Mine Lands Fund to clean up contaminated mine properties. And one of the requirements for private property owners who might participate in that program is that IDL requires them to join the VCP, so that cleanup is going on under our oversight. So, and since that's occurred last year, we've added 3 sites in partnership with IDL that are going to be cleaned up. Oops, sorry. I'm going in the wrong direction. What did I do? Does everybody see where I can use that? Give notes.
Oh, inside. Shoot.
Try not to do that again. Okay, so the process, I'll give you an overview and Leslie and Ryan will talk about maybe more of the details, but someone submits an application to DEQ. There's a $250 application fee. At a minimum, in addition to the application, they need to submit what's called a Phase 1 environmental site assessment, which I assume everybody here would be familiar with what that entails. It's more of a big picture. These are the potential issues that are occurring at a site. Even though the way the rule and the act are stated is that they have to submit one of these, if someone comes to us with an application where they have detailed Phase 2 actual on the ground, sampling information, we'll accept that in lieu of a Phase 1 because we feel like that's more relevant than just a site walkover in many cases. So what we review the application, and once we agree that they're eligible, we put out and develop and come to an agreement on what's called a voluntary remediation agreement, and which defines the roles and responsibilities and timelines that each of us will try to abide by. And it generally the remediation agreement follows the process that's outlined in the rules. At the time that they enter the agreement, there are also oversight costs that they have to pay to DEQ for our oversight. The rules specify that those occur basically in increments of $2,500. Our experience is typically that on most simple sites, $2,500 is more than sufficient to cover our oversight costs. And at the end of the process, if there's any money left over, that money gets refunded back to the participants. As much as I would like to keep that to help with program development, that's not allowed. So if there's any additional assessment that needs to be done by the participants, we specify that in the agreement, and we work through that. That all gets done. Then they prepare a voluntary remediation work plan. Once that work plan is in good enough shape that we feel comfortable with it, it goes out for public comment for 30 days. If there's any comments, we try and address those comments and make adjustments to the work plan as needed. Then the work plan gets approved. They conduct the cleanup, issue what's called a completion report, and submit it to us. We look at that. If they've accomplished everything that was specified in the work plan, we issue what's called a certificate of completion. And then if they wish to negotiate a covenant not to sue, they can request that, and we'll do that. And then at the end, as I mentioned, there's the potential for that tax exemption that they would try and negotiate. Now, getting back to your original question about if during the course of the remediation something comes up that wasn't anticipated, the way the rules are laid out, there are a couple of off-ramps for the participants where they or we can terminate the agreement. But there are also ways that if we if the work plan needs modification, we can modify the work plan. If let's say we get into the cleanup, we get an approved work plan, they start doing the work, and they find way more contamination or different kind of contamination than they anticipated, that is going to require a significant change in the remedy, then that would necessitate going out for public comment again and possibly revising the work plan. If it's just a change, a slight change in the direction of the remediation, but the overall goals haven't changed, then we can make a modification to the work plan without any kind of additional public comment. But once the work plan's approved, the entities are typically kind of on the hook to do the cleanup. You can terminate the agreement and get out of it before the work plan's approved. That's specified in the rules. But after that point, it becomes more difficult. Does that answer your? I think that's.
So I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to kind of go through the process just very, very briefly, because I know that all of you got emailed this presentation, and you're going to have to actually work this afternoon, so being awake would be very important. Don't want to bore you too much, yeah, okay, fantastic. So our work plan, it does get released for public comment. We have to take those things into account, obviously. And then the DEQ is going to accept it with or without minor changes. And again, if major changes come, after the work plan's approved, then we're going to have to go back through that formal process. For us, as environmental consultants, what clients seem to really want is that covenant not to sue. And then also being able to work with the DEQ on a non-adversarial basis. I can attest that it's been a real pleasure being able to work with DEQ on a completely different level than the way a lot of clients end up meeting DEQ representatives. We can call them, we can meet with them, and they can, it's very collaborative, which is a huge help. We've even brought our client in so he could ask questions on one of our projects. I mean, this is kind of, it depends on the kind of client, you're dealing with, but some people really value that. And then if the property is being developed, then, that also helps, because then we can say, okay, look, this is a timeline we're trying to work with. What can we do here? And, it's kind of a give and take. So, we're going to be trying to get the covenant not to sue for the clients, but there might be those activity use limitations, the environmental covenant, but all that's going to end up on that final property deed. In terms of the cost, we've kind of already covered that. It's going to be that $250 application fee, and then $2,500 for DEQ's time of the oversight of the project. So far, we've only dealt with it, where it hasn't gone over that $2,500. The variable cost, this is where it gets a little dirtier. Obviously, it's going to, the phase ones, you can kind of get those a dime a dozen here in town, ranging from $2,500 to $5,000 usually, depending on the site, the size, that sort of thing. On the phase twos, it can go from a very limited phase two where you're only potentially looking at a few soil samples to something much bigger. But obviously the variable costs, it can definitely range quite a bit depending on the project. In terms of the timeline, we have seen these go through the whole cleanup process within 6 months, but it'll typically take over a year, a little over a year. So, the application process takes about a month. Then you've got the public comment period. You have to develop your work plan and then submit it to DEQ, and then it gets submitted for a public comment. So that whole process takes a long time. The certificate of completion, the closeout, that sort of thing. The most time is going to be that remediation. And it depends on what kind of remedial target action levels you're trying to get. Remedial action target, yeah, levels. So anyways, but it's going to take about a year. Just really briefly, a couple sites that we did, one that we have taken through this whole process and one that we're still working on. We've got the Goodman Oil property that was at 27th and Main Street, you know, kind of near downtown. I think it's near the Symposium Bar. I haven't been there. But anyways, but I'm kind of curious. Early 2012, they did the phase 1, found that there was some historic lead and oil contamination there. I'm not exactly sure what happened between 2006 and 2012, why they did so many different limited phase 2s. I don't know if you guys do. Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big site. And,
it's a big site.
And the other issue is there's buried trash all over that place. So
yeah.
It's down by the river. Anytime you're down by the river, you're gonna find buried trash. So
yeah.
And you know, and then also back in the day, Old Man Goodman used some berms for target practice. So there was a lot of lead in some of those berms from the bullets. So yeah, you know, there was just, you know, things that we'd go back and analyze the data and we'd say, well, we got a data gap. We got to go figure out what this is and really neck this down to where we need it to be. So the reason it's kind of backwards on this one, what we'll do sometimes in brownfields is we'll do the phase 2 first, and then for a property transaction, because a phase 1 is only good for 180 days. It's got a 180-day shelf life. Once that 180 days times out, you cannot use that phase 1 to assert your bona fide prospective purchaser limited liability protections. So we knew there was a buyer for this property. So we performed the phase 1 for the buyer, so he could have that and assert his BFPP's limited liability protection. So that's why the phase 1 was done at the back end. So doing a phase 1 at the front end, it can help you do some planning and stuff, but if you already know enough about the site, if need be, I'd prefer to do the phase 1 where it's beneficial and can actually be used. So they can get the property transaction done within that 180 days.
And that's copacetic with all appropriate inquiry rule and ASTM standards.
Yeah, all of our phase 1s are AAI compliant and meet the current ASTM.
And that was one of the benefits because the property owner was around. We could actually talk to him, right, and find out sort of like historically what it was. Well,
yes and no. I mean, the last Goodman standing was around, but he never really had anything to do with the operations.
Okay.
So the guy that was running it, he kind of just cut loose one June, and back in June of 2006, he just walked out the door, said, "I'm done. I'm retiring. I'm out."
Symposium Bar has good popcorn.
Fantastic. All right. So anyways, we worked through, agreeing with between the owner and DEQ to get into the voluntary cleanup process. We did more sampling, or they did more sampling, I'm sorry. The work plan was approved. And for the remediation, this was mostly an excavation, hog and haul type site. So a lot of soil was excavated and taken to appropriate disposal facilities. There were also some groundwater wells we had to decommission, and some structures that we needed to demolish. The remediation was completed in 2013, and that covenant to sue was issued just a couple months later. So once things really got rolling, it was a pretty quick process. The approximate total cost of that project was about $150,000.
And it should be noted that one of the cleanup goals is the buyer wanted it to be suitable for residential use, potentially. So, I mean, these guys did a great job of getting it to where it's essentially approved for residential use. The only restriction on it is extraction of groundwater.
Can I jump in with a quick question? And it may be a Leslie or Bruce or both, but so, I've been involved in contaminated properties that come about in an enforcement action where there's a consent order and we're doing the whole process of submitting site assessments, getting those approved by DEQ, and then doing the remedial action plan, getting that approved, going through that whole process. I'm just curious, I mean, how much with the VCP, how much additional time and effort and expense is it typically to, take the extra effort to get the benefits of the VCP and the covenant not to sue, as opposed to just finishing out the consent order and then you're done with the enforcement action?
I'm not quite sure I get exactly what you're.
Okay, well, I'll ask afterwards. I
Yeah.
don't want to.
Like how much was remediation versus how much
But I'm
was
just
actually?
saying, like, in the enforcement context, sometimes I've thought this would be a good candidate for the VCP, but there's been a perception that, well, that's so much additional time and effort and expense. But the process looked a lot to me like the VCP process. So I was just wondering what, how much more would it have taken to just said, well, let's go ahead and do this in the VCP rather than just in the consent order. But we can talk about it
And
afterwards.
my quick answer would be, it depends.
Yeah.
And it's a site specific, it would be a site specific kind of thing, because the site specific circumstances as far as like what's the status of the cleanup, or that you would have to do under one case, shifting to the voluntary cleanup programs.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And then just really briefly, the Idaho Linen Supply Building, that's at Fulton and 8th Street in Bodo. We're actually cleaning that up with the voluntary cleanup program. They're doing the farmer's market inside right now, and behind the curtain, there's actually some horizontal wells that are collecting soil vapor from underneath the concrete. So what this project started in 2012, we did the phase 1. The limited phase 2 was done by DEQ under their brownfields program. It was a former dry cleaner site, so TCE. And in December the same year, the property owner and DEQ came into an agreement to go into the VCP. The work plan was finalized the next summer, and the site-specific cleanup levels were established. We started the remediation in 2014, and it's this soil vapor extraction system. The owner didn't initially want us to do any excavation. So we started off trying to suck up as much as we could. We ended up having to go back and doing an excavation, a small excavation just outside the building, where I believe that there was a tank. And there was some spillage associated with that tank. So we did a source removal there. It's still going on, but we used to have to monitor groundwater every quarter. We worked with DEQ, and after 3 quarters of meeting the targets, they were able to say, look, you're good. We're gonna, so right now it's just the soil vapor extraction system is going on. This one is also taking a little bit longer because, well, partly because of that whole, we had the source still right there thing, and that was kind of a property owner issue and less of anybody else's issue. But he wants to go to residential cleanup levels. So those are lower. So that's why it takes a little bit longer. Again, there's only so much you can say, look, you could meet it right now if you hit the industrial targets, but he's going to residential, and we're going to help him do it. So anyways, these are kind of dark, I apologize, but next time you go to the farmer's market, kind of take a look around. So anyways.
Well, one of the comments I would add to a couple of these things, one is that in the case of the Idaho Linen, we tried to work with the owner of the building to, like she mentioned that, the farmer's market is in there during the winter time. We try and allow, the other uses as they're acceptable while the cleanup's still going on. Clearly you can't have, residences there while the cleanup's going on, but with something like a market, the doors are open, it's a pretty safe environment. So it's a way that the property can get utilized. And other parts of the property that weren't the active part of the remediation, he was able to go in and actually start doing remodeling on those portions. And so once the cleanup's done, they'll be much farther ahead in terms of hitting the ground running and being able to utilize that property more quickly. The second comment I had was that about the costs that Leslie's mentioning about the cleanup costs, like in the case of Goodman Oil, I think that we probably spent, the Brownfields program probably spent $80 or $90,000 on assessment costs that weren't gonna, wouldn't be incurred by the property owner. So.
And I think it's a great program. I tell all my friends that. I mean, it's nice to be able to work, one-on-one with GQ and have a dialogue. So anyways, but thank you so much. I apologize for the time, but I really appreciate you guys having us here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
That's your question about coming out, like trying in order to bailing out.
I mean, it struck me that like they were already having to spend all of the time and expense to go through the, meet all of the rules and requirements.
We've had a couple sites where they've been under a consent like for leaking underground storage tanks. They've been under a consent order, but the cleanup has gotten kind of installed for the property. We have a calcitrant. And then if there's a property transaction, and the new owner has a different, let's say, attitude about things, as part of that property transaction, what we've done is terminate the consent order, and at the same time enter into a voluntary mediation agreement. And then we just move ahead under the voluntary cleanup program instead. So that's, I don't know if that's kind of like what you're thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like putting myself back in that situation, like, kind of trying to nudge it, so because it didn't seem like the incremental time.
I was sure it related to water loss.
And now that I've got this.
Going through the consent order process and getting it cleaned up and all that, it's like, if you can spend a little bit more, and it takes a little bit more time, but you can get further action, coming to not to sue and all that.
Having the sues got a little more teeth, for their actions.
And depending on what the nature of the tenants are, gas station owners, at least traditionally, have not been very interested in, participating in any kind of cleanup program.
Right,
And so trying to get them, into, let's say, a voluntary cleanup program is pretty darn hard.
Yeah, I'm sure there is some aspect of there just, for some people, that's just too big of a gap to bridge. They'd be voluntarily submitting themselves. Anyway, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
Thank you
Leslie.
so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
really
it.
good. I think, was it Peter's withering questioning that just scared Ryan off?
Yeah, no, he needs to get that mining certificate. So, I apologize. He was like,
Oh, no,
do you want me to come? And I was like, well, you can try, it'd be great.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, I think it worked out well with the three of you. I think 4 would have been a little.
Well, Ryan would have been enjoying this meeting.
Oh, okay.
That might have been actually better.
I have a question. I don't know if you're working like brownfield stuff, I was just trying to give an example of you guys were talking on the new Esterson Park. Is that a project that largely like the brownfield stuff? Could it have or should it have? Would that have been a good thing?
Could have, but given the size and scope and what I would have known about that property before, I would have been really hesitant to try and take it on just because I don't think we would have been a very difficult time with certain those projects to get our arm.
Yeah, it's like,
So that was, I mean, that was brought up
Yeah, that was
a little bit.
I feel a lot,
But just from a size and scope, cost,
Mostly I'll feel
and then,
just send me
you know, I also got to look at the potential, because we wouldn't have found, we wouldn't have been able to get
Yeah, well, yeah,
everything,
but if you,
then it would say,
What percentage of sites
Right.
do you think